There has been a lot of discussion regarding Illuvium Beyond Wave 2 and whether it was a success or not. We're not really going to dive too heavily and too deeply into that, but I did want to point out a few things that I've been researching myself to try and uncover how Wave 2 actually compares to Wave 1. The first thing we definitely need to note is that with Wave 2, there was only about 500-600 unique wallets, some new additions as well, but there weren't many unique wallets participating, especially in the alpha sale and even now in the extended sale. But how did this actually translate to disc purchases? The other thing we need to consider is that a lot more ETH was spent as a percentage basis. So if there was $1,000 spent in Wave 1, it was more like 40% of that was ETH. And in Wave 2, it was more like 60% of that was ETH. So that is a big jump. That being said, the overall pricing structure is very different in Wave 2, so the revenue generation will look very different. We're not going to look at that too closely, but what I did want to discuss is I've started to uncover all of the discs minted, and I'm looking at those numbers and seeing how they compare between Wave 1 and Wave 2, and honestly, the statistics so far have really surprised me. So, to uncover this, we need to first look at the Wave 1 sale stats. So this is essentially how many standard non-alpha discs were minted during Wave 1. It's just that simple, not the alpha sale, the sale coming after that. And as you can see here, on day 1 and 2, it was in the 4,000 to 7,000 mark, and you're hitting about 10k discs being minted on the first 2 days. It drops considerably down to 2,000 on day 3, and then you get lower and lower, and you get 1,000. It's pretty consistent for those first week or two. It drops way below that to about 500 discs per day, and then it bumps back up when the leaderboard struck. The other side of the equation is on the other side of the screen here, where towards the end of the sale, as you can understand, when people are like getting FOMO and they're like, oh crap, I really want to get these discs, it bumped up a little bit. We're actually looking at that section over there. Towards the back here, we can't really look at it because this is actually the GameStop sale. So we're going to ignore a lot of this major tail end here, but this section here is the last day of the sale. And as you can see, just over 1,000 discs were purchases, even less than I thought might have been purchased on the last day, but nonetheless. The next thing we look at is the mega non-alpha. As you can see, it is way more consistent overall, but obviously the numbers are overall quite a bit lower. So as we saw with standard discs for Wave 1, about 10,000 was sold in the first 2 days. But with this, we're looking at more like 2,000 or 3,000, but the drop off was way less, way less. So everyone's buying their standard discs in bulk and all in the one time, and mega discs, people seem to be purchasing over time a lot more consistently. Now what we're looking at here is it sat around the 400 to 600 mark for the first week or so, and then dropped down, it sat in the 100 to 200 range for the next period of time. Obviously, there was a spike up here and here for the leaderboard, but besides that, it was just spikes here and there, probably a whale picking up a bunch of mega discs at the same time, or a bunch of competitions and things going on. It's hard to say why it's spiking on and off like that, but it is. So that's a really interesting stuff. And there's no GameStop sale in this one. So you can see all the sales. And then you've got the August, there's an August period here. I'm going to assume that that's the minting of discs that was distributed to people during Wave 2 because of the Wave 1 rewards. And now what you've been waiting for, we're going to jump into what this looks like in comparison to Wave 2. So here it is here. Now I know this is a little bit hard to visualize, but I will talk you through it. This is basically a very similar time period. I might have it wrong by a day or two between Wave 1 and Wave 2. As you can see on the left with Wave 1, you've got about 4,500 and 7,000 discs being minted. And in Wave 2, on those 2 days, you've got 6k and 6k. So basically the same amount of discs minted on day 1, 2, and even there's more on day 3 for Wave 2 standard non-alpha discs. Obviously, we're still considering that, sorry, I lost my words there. We're still considering that some of these are the same people minting all these discs, but more importantly, a lot of these were minted as a part of the marketing discs as well. The other thing we need to note is that the standard discs are a lot cheaper in Wave 2, so although this might look like the same amount of discs being minted, the revenue numbers can look significantly different, and they might be impacting a lot of these numbers as well. So maybe if the price was higher, then less discs would have been minted this time around. But I think overall, this is quite interesting to see, but since the marketing disc kind of skews some of these early numbers, it's not very effective to look at these in that vacuum of the start of the sale. But as we get later on to the sale, you can see that during Wave 1, it hovered around the 500 to 1,000 mark quite consistently. And in Wave 2, it held this up really, really well. Now, we might see it diminish on the tail end here and really start to come down. But in comparison to Wave 1, there's pretty much the same amount of discs being minted, between the 1,000 or 2,000 mark sometimes with some spikes, but mostly at about the 1,000 mark on every single day of the Wave 2 extended sale. Now, as we look at the mega discs, you can see that we had more discs overall purchased in those first 3 days, just by a tiny bit. But then the Wave 1 sale was even more significant, with a lot of things really close to 500 to 600, whereas in Wave 2, they sat closer to 400 to 500 for that period of time. Although after that, you could see that it diminished greatly, basically not hitting the 400 mark at all after Wave 1 and down the road there. But as we remember from Wave 1, there were lots more mega discs, very widely spread out with all those different spikes. Whereas in Wave 2, we're seeing a much more consistent buy pressure around the 400 mega discs per day mark, which is something we didn't really see in Wave 1. So a lot more megas are actually being considered and being purchased. I think this says a lot to the testament of how good the product is now. We have those people that were really consistently in Illuvium Beyond before, and they've come back for Wave 2 because the product is better for them. They're purchasing more discs and hopefully getting more things out of it. There is one other thing I want to show you that I did not prepare quite as much in advance, but we're going to quickly take a look at it. So if we go over the discs on the Illuvium Master section, no, wait. Yes, disc just hadn't refreshed yet. If we go to discs on the Illuvium Master section, you can see something really interesting here. So as we can see with the Wave 1 alpha discs, okay, you've got 140 listed out of 4,400 minted. 4,400 not listed, but still exist in the ecosystem. Whereas if you get to the alphas for Wave 2, you can see that just not as many exist. 500 are in existence that are unopened. Now, a lot were still minted, it's just this many are unopened. So if we really consider Wave 1 standards and we consider non-alpha discs here, there's only 500 megas that haven't been opened yet and probably thousands and thousands that have been minted. Whereas with Wave 1 mega discs, Wave 1 mega discs, you can see 2,000 are still unopened. So what I'm seeing here is that a lot more people are opening their discs. Now, we won't have the full picture until the end of the extended sale, but overall, there is a much higher percentage of people opening discs. Don't forget to follow my Twitter, and I will be breaking down some of those finer details as well, and maybe making another video. So don't forget to subscribe down below. And if you guys are going to go purchase discs, don't forget to use my link down in the description down below, link.illuvium.io/Scoriox. I really appreciate it. I do get a commission from it, and it really does go a long way, so I really appreciate that. But if you learned something about Illuvium Beyond and the disc purchase and the disc minted that was different to what you believed, then please drop a like down below. Let me know in the comments what you think is going to happen for the rest of the extended sale, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.